Good evening and welcome to the Milton Conservation Commission meeting for Tuesday, April 9th, 2024. We have two matters of formality that we bring up. First one is we invite everybody to speak and ask questions and make comments, but we do ask for record-keeping purposes that you identify yourself. And then you're welcome to ask the questions and make comments that you deem appropriate. The second issue of formality is we introduce ourselves. My name is John Kiernan. And let me just read across my screen as I see it. Steve?
Steve Ivas, Conservation Agent.
Philip?
Philip Driscoll, Conservation Clerk.
Tom Palmer?
Tom Palmer, member.
Ingrid?
Ingrid Beatty, Commissioner.
And Arthur?
Arthur Doyle, Commission member.
Great. So we have our quorum. We're ready to go. First on the agenda is Turner's Pond Pathway. This is informational only, and Pete Jackson, I think you're our presenter tonight.
Yep, happy to. As any of you who've been out there and looked at the condition of the new path around Turner's Pond, we continue to have drainage problems. It's been a very challenging year. Usually when we construct in July and August, we expect fairly dry weather and easy going, but we had continuous, very intense rainstorms. So we fought drainage throughout the construction project. It was very difficult for the contractor, but we hung in there and we thought we had the path pretty well completed. And then we had some very large storms in November and January, and again this March, that flooded the area tremendously. And there's been some significant ruts and things that have opened up in the path. Material has washed, from the edge of the path toward the pond. There's a couple places where little bits gotten into the pond, but for the most part, it's been stopped by the erosion control, although the erosion control hasn't been maintained since, most of the completion of the path last November. So there are places, kids go fishing down there and they pick up the wattles to catch worms underneath, and they move it so they can get their bikes and things. So the erosion control is not in great shape now. But the path, the biggest thing is the path continues to rut. The Board of Park Commissioners invested in some additional drainage beyond what was on the original plan. And at times it seems to have worked, but when we get these really big floods, there have been a couple times that the water from the pond elevation actually was a foot over the elevation of the path, which we've never seen in, as long as I've been around town. There have been some problems at the outlet from the pond going into Pine Tree Brook. But so it's not in great shape. Most of the path is good, but there's still rutting that happens. The contractor, the last time in March, just about 3 weeks ago, the contractor came out and did repairs again to the places where it was rutting and put some drainage pipes under the path to try to prevent that. And then it was March 24th, we had a huge storm again, and it just washed everything out again. So he thinks he's done, that these are acts of God that he doesn't have any control over. The contractor's been very cooperative, throughout the whole process, but he's thrown his hands up, and I really don't know. It's hard to know whether the weather conditions are the new normal or whether it was just that we've had an unusual year. I fear it may be the new normal, in which case maybe, the elevation of the path and trying to put in a soft surface path really isn't appropriate. So I've come basically to report to you the conditions and the challenges that are going on out there. The contractor would love to get permission to remove the erosion control and do some kind of minor cleanups and stuff there and call it a day. But I feel that the commission should have a chance to see the condition out there and talk about, what we expect to have done out there before that we can get an acceptance of the project.
Pete, last year, I don't know, late summer, early fall, I think you came before us and we approved some revisions to the original plan that related to new drainage under the
Yes.
pathway
Yes.
near the, I don't know what northeast side it would be. Maybe it's
Yeah,
northeast,
up
but
the
near
Glover School
Glover.
end, the Glover School end. And that's worked well. That there hasn't been any continued erosion up in there, and that's been stabilized quite well. But there's a couple problem areas. The main one is right where the second flood. Okay, what's the name? Flood storage basin is. When we constructed that, we designed it as per the plans, but when we got down to the base elevation, there was a lot of clay down there. So although we were able to construct the storage capacity required, the basin does not drain through the subsoil, so the water kind of stays there. And it's at the
So Pete, let me just ask you a question. There are a couple of those basins. There's, I think, one, at least one on the north side, and definitely one on the south side. Are there more of those basins?
there are three basins.
Where's
The first one is if you're coming from the Central Avenue parking lot going toward Glover School,
Yeah.
on the left, there's a basin that's adjacent to the wetland replacement that we did last time we did the path 12, 13 years ago. It's adjacent to that wetland. And then if you continue along that way about another 150 feet, there's another basin in there, and that's the one that's got a clay bottom. So
Okay.
although it has storage capacity, it doesn't drain.
I see.
And then there's a third one as you go across the western side of the pond. There's a third
Yeah,
one
sort of the northwestern side, and that one seems to be
near the
working
big
pretty
beach.
well. Yes.
That seems to be working. Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. So I got it. Okay. Thank you. Sorry to
Pete,
interrupt.
this is Arthur. Question, the storage area toward Glover School, the second one,
Yes.
the elevation for that, do I recall, is higher than the first one on the left coming from the parking lot?
The base elevation is about the same because it doesn't drain very well. We ended up building up and putting a berm between the basin and the pond, so that it wouldn't top the path whenever it drained. So, but the base elevation is pretty much the same.
Okay, thank you.
Pete, is this CPA money? Community Preservation Act money?
Half of the project was paid by CPA and the other half through town funds. And then there's been some extra work orders, so it's probably 40% is CPA and 60% are town funds.
Yeah, what's the overall cost?
It's approaching 200,000 now. The original bid price was 165, and then with extra work that we're done, we're approaching 200,000.
All right. And who is the contractor?
It's Ramco Survey Stakes is their name. They've done a good bit of work in town. They did the demolition at the Ice House project, and they've done a couple other things around town.
I'm sorry, what did they do with the ice house?
They did demolition work for the built buildings that were there and some site excavation. I don't know about excavation, but demolition.
Okay. All right, because the ice houses had some recent work done there to improve their erosion controls, and it appears to be working and it appears to be well done. That's the most recent effort,
Yeah.
and I didn't know who did it. I know Charlie Bosworth is the developer,
Yeah.
but it as far as I know, and Arthur, you may have more recent knowledge, or Tom Palmer, you might, as to whether or not it's working. It appears to be working. Can you confirm that, Arthur?
A problem at Turner's is that the land around it is so low, particularly as you go from the parking lot toward the school on the left there, that's all wetlands in there. So when rain builds up there, it just flows toward the pond. And when the school was redone and they removed some woodlands there in order to build their soccer field and things like that. That's causing a high point and the water comes off there. There's almost no grass on that field anymore. So the water just, comes off the school grounds, which are higher than the pond. And a lot of water is coming off of there and going toward the pond. That's why we had to put in extra drainage to try to pick up some of that water.
And that's what was behind my question about the elevation. When I've been down there a couple of times, that area has been exceedingly wet.
Very wet. And I don't know if it's the new normal. And if it's the new normal, then I don't know that we can maintain a soft surface path at that elevation if we're going to get that kind of water. We've been struggling. Pine Tree Brook has been high. The Neponset River is still very high. It's down about 1.5 feet from where it was, 6 weeks ago, but it's still very high. And it's all
I ran it. It was terrible.
all related, yeah.
Yeah.
They had that king tide that flooded the yacht club and flooded the greenway down in the estuary.
Marcy Boulevard. And Pete, I think you're right in citing the new normal, only that we haven't gotten there yet. The predictions of sea level and other water increases for the next 20 years or so are going to be considerable.
Well, given that comment, and I'll switch it to Pete, but do you think that there should be some design changes, that is to add some underpath culverts, drainage pipes? I don't mean major culverts, but just some mechanism for getting under the path instead of over the path.
There's a couple of pipes that have been put in there and things eroded away again. It's possible there may be some more. But with the water elevations that it's been, where, it's actually overtopped the path elevation. It's not just water coming down from there, but if you go out there and walk it now, you see what almost looks like a rack line on the beach, of things coming in from the pond from high elevations and depositing material along the path. I don't know if we can maintain a soft surface path there anymore.
Mr. Chairman, might this, going back to an earlier comment, warrant a site walk? And if so, is there a way in which we can do it in conjunction with a site review of the Glover School situation that could be contributing to the high water level at this particular point along the pond?
The simple answer is yes, but I'm not sure how you're distinguishing the Glover School issue.
Well, if we have sheet water coming off of Glover School property or insufficient storage tanks off the rooftop, et cetera, of Glover School, that may be something that we need to take a look at.
All right. Do you know, Pete, is that the source?
I think there's
the area where you're talking.
Yeah. I think there's some that comes off of Glover School. We pulled out the Glover School drainage plans from that when that was done, and I don't know if there's been any maintenance of those. There's some storage basins in there, but no, people from Glover didn't even seem to know they were there. The engineering department did. So whether there's been any maintenance of those facilities. The other thing, like I mentioned, the what was to be a play area there, the grass is pretty much all gone, so there's nothing to absorb the water, so more of it runs off. So there's no doubt that that's a contributing element. I can't say that that's, the only or the major part of the drainage, but it certainly is contributing to some of the drainage problems we're having out there.
John, if I may just add, the last time I was down there, that section of the Glover School property was very, very wet. Pete, is that your observation as well?
Yeah, it is. And it is higher than the path, so, it tends to go that way. if it's not being absorbed by vegetation and things, it runs off.
All right, well, I guess we've got long-term issues and short-term issues. On the short-term issue, is it your recommendation that the erosion controls stay in place? I understand the contractor wants to get out of there, but that's
Yeah.
kind of a different issue.
Yeah.
Because if erosion controls are appropriate, then maybe we have to shift the onus to Parks Department to maintain that. At least in the near term.
Yeah.
What is your recommendation about
I
maintenance of erosion?
think in parts the erosion control could be taken away, but in a lot of it, it's just going to allow more of the path surface material that is continuing to erode. You know, it would allow more of it to reach either the banks or into the pond itself. So I think maintaining erosion control is not a bad idea.
All right. All
And
right.
that's out there should be maintained. The erosion control that's out there, you know, it hasn't been maintained for a while.
Understood.
Yeah.
And is the contractor claiming substantial completion? They want to do their punch list and close up shop?
They said that they're done going out there, and they've 2 months ago they submitted for their retainage, but we haven't released any retainage, and we held a invoice for, you know, a couple of months too, that, you know, they did the work, but we knew there was still stuff to do. So I think we can, you know, he knows that he owns taking the erosion control out if we think it's, you know, worth doing, but I don't know that it is. Maybe we can get him out there to do some cleanup of some of the path material that's eroded toward the pond. So I don't think we can get a whole lot out of them. So I think a site walk with the park department there, you know, so we can get your commission's thoughts on the condition of the entire project at this point. And then whether it's come up with new ideas or there's maintenance that if the contractor won't do it, that the park department is required to do. I think that's a wise way to look at it.
All right. Well, I'm in favor. I think we're all in favor of doing a site walk. If we could do it jointly with Parks, that would be even better. So I know that, you know, it'll be easy enough for us to select a date. As you know, we usually do these on Saturday mornings. But then somehow we'll have to coordinate with Parks Department to make sure they can do it. And we have to do it fast enough to get like if we were going to do it this Saturday, we'd have to get our public notice out tomorrow. Just to make sure we have the 48 hours.
I'm pretty sure. And if you guys set a date, whether it's this Saturday or the next one, I will tomorrow morning contact the Parks Department, and I'm pretty sure that Kevin will get out there. And I don't know if there's any chance that Chase Berkeley would get out there. He's been out there with us a couple times to look at it and to try to come up with ideas. The manufacturer, the supplier of the path surface material, Reed Custom Soils, Tony Will's been out there a couple of times, and he's ready to go out again and look at it. You know, trying to get all the input possible. It's a real conundrum.
All right. How about this Saturday, members of the commission?
I can't do it this Saturday. I can do the following.
What's the date? What's the date of the following Saturday?
That
20th.
would be the 20th. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I can do the 20th. How about Tom? Can you? I can't hear you, Tom. You're
Tom's
on.
on mute.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
And Arthur, can
I
you?
can.
Yes.
All right. So why don't we do this 8:30 Saturday morning? We'll meet at the Central Ave parking lot.
Yeah.
And then, Pete, if you could just check with Kevin and see if Parks can make it at the same time. And once we get confirmation from Parks, then Philip, you can provide the notice so that we have a public meeting, adequate notice.
Absolutely.
All right, good. So the target is Saturday, April 20th, 8:30 in the morning, Central Avenue.
Very good.
All right. Now, before we move on, are there any abutters, members of the public that have a question or would like to make a comment?
Yeah, hi, I'm Roy Chambers.
Hi, Roy.
How are you? I have a question for Steve. I was at a Board of Health meeting last week relative to a beaver issue. And I want to know what the status of that is. I understand that, Steve, you had withdrawn the application for removal.
Yes, Roy. We thought that the beavers were presenting an imminent hazard, and that's not the case. So they can live there very happily if the outlet of the pond is kept open.
Yeah, right. Well, as you know, the area they're in, they're not even close to any of the drainage.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
well, that's good news.
Good. Glad to give good news.
Thank you very
That's
much.
good.
Sure.
Well, Pete, can you, apropos of the question from Roy, can you go back? At one point, you said that there were some problems in terms of the drainage from the pond into Pine Tree.
Yes.
What's causing that?
There was a grate on that outlet that it was made with rebar, and the rebars were very close to one another, so there was just not adequate place for debris and stuff to get out, so it would back up there, and it could build up so that the pond would be a foot or 18 inches higher than the outlet elevation going out. And so I've been on the park department for probably 15 years now to maintain that outlet. So finally this summer, we removed the grate so that the leaves and branches that are flowing out can go all the way out to Pine Tree Brook. And that doesn't allow that to be a barrier that builds up the elevation of the pond.
Okay, so that's not a problem.
That's not a problem at this point, no.
That's good. More good news. All right, thank you. Anybody else from the public? Hearing out, we'll continue this hearing until April 20th, 8:30 in the morning. It's a public meeting, folks. So all are welcome, and we'll meet in the Central Avenue parking lot. Thanks all.
Thank you.
All right, and next on the agenda is request for determination of applicability, MBTA right-of-way. And I know we have a number of presenters, I think.
Yes, good evening. My name is Calvin Layton. I'm a consultant for the MBTA in putting this plan together. And I think the other folks in the MBTA are representing it could probably introduce themselves as well at this time.
Good evening, Alicia Toms with MBTA.
Good evening and welcome.
Thank you.
And I'm Amanda Smith with BFC Group, supporting that project as well.
Welcome, Amanda. Thank you. So, Calvin, anybody else, or are you ready to present, Calvin?
I think I'm ready to get into it. And
good, thanks.
If anybody else comes on that wants to speak, that would be fine. So, okay, this is a routine filing for us. We were here 5 years ago. This is in regards to the vegetation management plans from Mass Department of Ag Resources that was set up between MDAR and the DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, back in the late 80s. And these plans are good for 5 years, and every 5 years they need to be redone and revisited with the local conservation commissions. So the RDA is for the determination of the wetland boundaries. The good news here is that we hired BSC Group to come through and do a complete new delineation of the wetlands on the line. So we have a good solid delineation, and which again determines our sensitive areas and determines our no spray areas. And we've provided the maps of those, and BSC is here to answer any questions that might come up. So this is for routine vegetation maintenance on the line. MBTA takes the safety of the commuting public very seriously, and need to provide a safe rail corridor. And a key part of that is managing vegetation, both on the rail bed and on the sides of the right-of-way to provide a safe corridor. So this vegetation management plan is good for 5 years, and we will implement it and continue what we've done. There are no changes in the way we manage the vegetation from the last time. I know the last time we were here 5 years ago, there were some concerns about what we were doing, and I believe we addressed those concerns. I have not heard of any issues in the last 5 years. I think we did a great job of keeping the T right away there in Milton in good condition, and followed through on what we promised you guys to do. So we're back again for a determination that will allow us to continue for the next 5 years.
And according to your current plans, do you distinguish between the mechanical vegetation removal and the chemical vegetation removal?
The VMP talks about both types of maintenance. So on a simple way to explain it would be on the rail bed itself, we do an herbicide application. All of our applications up till now have been by backpack sprayer, handheld backpack sprayer by a crew of 3 to 4 people that go through. They spot treat weeds that are coming up to the ballast. And they do that in the May-June timeframe. And then later in the season, they will come back and they may be targeting woody vegetation on the side where it's appropriate that what might grow into the T right away. And then we also at times will do tree removals as necessary if something hazardous or something interfering with the overhead wires and infrastructure like signs, signals, things like that. Where cutting has to be done. And then in the no spray areas, we would do mechanical weed whacking, whatever, to control the vegetation there.
And line of sight is part of that tree removal portion?
Yes, it's critical, like around corners, that the operator be able to see ahead and not have stuff coming into his line of sight. And then especially coming into stations, he needs to be able to see what's going on as coming into stations. That's it's a fairly accessible right away. People can get out there, and the operator needs to be able to see down the rail.
Calvin, very articulate and professional presentation, so I thank you. Now I'm going to give you some history, because some of us here on the commission have been around a long time. And in September of 2009, when we were considering the same, we did approve an order of conditions. Actually, we approved an RDA, a negative RDA with certain conditions. And
Correct.
It was a disaster. And Northern Tree was the same contractor that I guess you've got now. We had many hearings, many discussions, and we signed a consent order with the MBTA in which they would give us $15,000 in cash and 40 hours of labor to replant the trees that they took down unnecessarily, that had nothing to do with a line of sight. In addition, there were shrubs and plantings that were required because, and I don't know how familiar you are with the area, most of us grew up here, so we know it pretty well. But on the Elliott Street side, right by the Adams Street Bridge, there's a sort of an angle portion between Elliott Street and the right-of-way. And we, the Conservation Commission members, referred to that as the nuclear zone. And it was either a nuke or perhaps napalm, but every living thing, every creature, every bug, every blade of grass was demolished, removed, gone. There was nothing there. And we had several site walks out there, and that led to the consent agreement with the MBTA, and they said, oops, we're sorry. Now, we had approved, again, all of the EPA and DEP approved herbicides. And so I don't know if it was a change in the herbicides applied or if it was the the actual installation or implementation of that. We don't know what happened, but we know what the result was. And just as a side point, the gentleman from the MBTA was very bright, very articulate, and a true gentleman, Andrew Brennan. And he basically apologized and said, "You're right." And that's why we've agreed to pay. Now, of course, they never did pay, which is a different issue. And it may come to a bonding issue before us tonight, because even though the MBTA said, yes, we owe you the money, we owe you the 40 labor hours to replant the trees, we never got it. And Mr. Brennan was very good. And he said, listen, we're in a deficit funding situation. You've got to go to the legislature. We just don't have the funds. So I'm looking to see whether or not we need, and this is a question, it's not I'm not taking an editorial position, but I put it out there. Do we need a bond for this? Because we do not want to go through what we did. And I admit, it's back in 2009 and 2019, you seem to, stay within you comply with the conditions that we set. And some of those conditions were, by the way, we want to see the trees that you intend to take down, so we can look at it before you let northern trees loose, because they're tree cutting, and they're gonna cut trees. So we'd like to have a pre-construction meeting where not just the agent, I'd like the commission to walk this line. So I don't know if you can do that. And you heard we've got a site visit. We like to go to the site, so we can do it on April 20th on Saturday. If you can tell us which trees you're trying to remove. And the last time we did it, we didn't walk the whole distance from Mattapan, but we walked Central Avenue to, I don't know, Butler or Cedar Street. We went beyond Milton, by the way. And I'll acknowledge, there's a little footnote to that consent decree, because it was actually that money and labor hours were for both Milton and Boston. But we were in pretty close touch with the folks in Boston, and they acknowledged that most of the harm was done on the Milton side. So we had agreed, that we'd come to an amicable split of the funding, which neither of us got. So that's by way of history. And there are some new commissioners. Okay. I know, Ingrid, you were there. You saw the nuked area. Tom, you were on the commission, but you may have seen it yourself. It was pretty stark.
I don't know exactly what you mean, John. Could you say again where it was?
It's right off of Elliott Street, between Adams Street and where Steel and Rye is. There's like a hillside that drops over the railroad right of way, and it runs between Steel and Rye.
Yeah, tremendous retaining wall.
Yes. Large one.
Right
up to where
it's very hard to, right. It's very hard to get at the area off Elliott Street, because Elliott Street is so high above the railroad. So there is a steel fence there. And then there's a fall away area of vegetation. And that fall away area produces trees, namely ailanthus and white ash. And I don't know, I wouldn't know what to do if somebody told me to maintain it, because I would say, how can I do it? I can't get to it. It's between the fence and the tracks. So maybe somebody could not get to it and decided, I can't get to it except if I douse everything.
Well, they doused everything. Every critter, every blade of grass, every dandelion, nothing would grow there.
I just walked by there a couple of weeks ago, and I was there in the fall too. And it's an interesting illustration of Darwinian pressure on invasives, because I saw an ailanthus tree with bittersweet climbing up it, and porcelain berry was smothering the bittersweet. So that's, I guess, what you get if you do 100% disturbance. You get the hardiest
side. On the positive side, there's now lots of milkweed growing along that fence as well.
That's good. I also saw Pringle's aster, a pretty wildflower.
Yeah. But with the period of time that we were talking about, it went from green to nothing green, gray and brown and dead.
Yeah, I guess that sounds like it was nukes, doesn't it?
Yeah, Yes.
Sure look that way.
That's the term that we use. You're right. So and Calvin, I don't think that's onerous if we have a site walk and B, ask you to designate the trees that you're going to cut so that we don't have a repeat. Granted, it's 15 years ago. I got it.
Right.
But is that something that you could do?
Well, it's. I think that you've got a very good point there. That from what you've described to me, it sounds it was way beyond even what a VMP would allow to be done. There are restrictions in there about the height of vegetation that can be treated and all kinds of things. I do think that, especially if we have to cut off right away, we're going to be getting permission from landowners for that, and you should certainly be involved within the right of way. If it's in your jurisdiction, then I don't have a problem with marking trees and letting you know what we're going to do for removal. It's just a courtesy, so I don't have a problem with that. I don't think right now we have any pending removals to do on that line. Part of the VMP requires patrols and plans that when you because we have the 5-year plan, then we have a yearly operational plan, and so part of that yearly operational plan is to actually come up with a yearly plan. So we might not have anything this year, but we certainly might have something next year, and we could set it up so that way ahead of time. In the winter, when we can see in the woods, here's what we want to do, and do some type of a site walk so you guys can see what we're doing. We don't. I have a famous statement, and you're living proof of that. Is herbicides don't lie. If you put them in the wrong place, you will know you put them there. They just don't lie. So, I think that when it's done right, it's fine. But when it's done wrong, you end up with a mess on your hands, like you've described. And I think that we've worked hard in the last 5 years to restore some credibility in the program. So, I think that that's reasonable.
Commissioners, questions, comments? Because part of it is, what we see now, and I'm not sure unless we know, when you're going to do it. I don't know if it's worthwhile walking now, because if we didn't see the trees coming down, what I'm trying to prevent is the taking down of trees that were clearly unnecessary. And the T agreed to it. They agreed. Yep.
Right.
It's not line of sight, so we're not talking safety. Yeah.
Right. No, and I agree with you as well, that if a tree doesn't need to come down, if it's healthy and growing well and is not interfering, why are we spending the money to take it down? No, I agree with you on that. There has to be a reason for it to come down. And I'm a certified arborist, so I stand behind what I say when it comes to, the proper evaluation of trees. It needs to be done. So, and that obviously was a miss.
Arthur, you got your hand up.
In terms of walking it now, I mean, that's possible to do. The problem that we face in the T, and maybe someone from the T could speak to this, is that anybody that goes on the tracks has to go through safety training. And we're more than willing to do that, but it's just it's another requirement, and we're under the jurisdiction of state agencies for safety, and everybody that goes on that track has to have that right away training, clearance, whatever to do. So that takes time.
Understood and agreed to. Understood and agreed to.
Okay, thank you.
We've done it before.
Okay, great.
I was going to ask, this was last year, I believe, that a request was made to have someone from the environmental department represent to ensure any integrity with any promises. At a drill last year, that the commissioners went along the right of way alongside a representative from the environmental department to ensure that everything was in agreement, or did that not happen?
I'm sorry, you're talking about last year?
Last go around, meaning, okay, I appreciate the concerns relative to the 2009 circumstance. We're trying to say, okay, things haven't been as disastrous as that. I believe there are measures put into place to ensure that that reputation and integrity has been rebuilt over time. Forgive me for saying last year, I guess last go around, was that the requirement, and was that part of a successful means of approaching the same project?
I don't believe that we did walk the line 5 years ago.
Okay.
So we had the pushback at the time was that the T was suggesting that they were exempt, and we were one of the, I guess, 22 communities that said, no, you're not exempt. So we issued the order, and I know that there was some talk about litigating that issue. I don't think it ever was, but we do not recognize an exemption for the T. But having said that, we did not walk the line in 2019.
Hi, can I say a few words? I'm Janice Kearney from the Environmental Department at the MBTA. I work with Alicia. The first thing I wanted to talk about was the safety, the walking of the right-of-way. So I know that you just agreed that, yes, you would take the training, but it's more than just taking the training. It's scheduling and taking the training, but it's also getting clearance now on the right-of-way. We have new FTA requirements and safety that are in place. And so it's not like it used to be for walking the right of way, even if you could walk it parallel. So, if we could walk the area that you have issues with outside a fence line where we're not on the right of way, that's one thing. But if we're on the right of way, we're going to have to get track time. And that could not happen. That may not happen. I shouldn't say it could not happen. That may not happen for quite some time, like months, because of ongoing scheduling. So I just want to put that out there, it's not like it used to be. And to get to Alicia's point that she just made about, this is the last round that we were here twice before, once for this subway and then once on the commuter rail side. The commuter rail side actually still is an appeal. It's an appeal right now, along with 22 other communities, but that's still an appeal. But we're filing this VMP and going forward on the subway side.
Understood everything you said. My firm has represented Amtrak for at least in my experience, the last 35 years. So I know the rules and the regs, and I know the training. Anything else?
I have a question about the plans.
Yes.
I'm looking at a plan that shows the line itself overlaid with stretches that are blue or yellow, and yes. I think they're labeled no spray zones and limited spray zones.
That is correct.
I'm just questioning I'm curious what those are. I don't know what they are.
So within the sensitive site, which includes the 100-foot buffer, when all sensitive areas are blue, and they're marked not only on maps for the guys that are doing the treatment, but we actually put blue tags on the rail when a sensitive area begins. Within that sensitive area, we will get close to a wetland, and we will get within the area of a wetland where we can no longer spray herbicides. And then those zones are yellow. They're no spray zones. We will then put a yellow tag on the rail, or we actually put posts in the side of the right of way with a yellow tag on it to show the zone that says this is a wetland. We cannot spray in this area. So those are in the sensitive areas. We can only spray once in a calendar year and we can do one touch up in a calendar year. And we can only use materials that are listed on Mass Department of Ag Resources sensitive site list. So that we're restricted to the type of herbicide we can use, and we're restricted to when we can use it, and we're restricted to where we can use it in those zones. And as you notice, as most of the Milton area is blue or yellow or what. I mean, there's a lot going on there.
Thank you. Let me ask this. From a sort of functional or utilitarian point of view, which do you prefer to use, mechanical or herbicide? So
on the ballast, herbicides are basically essential because the one thing an herbicide does that mechanical can't do is it destroys the root of the plant. And the root of the plant is what holds moisture and water in the ballast, and it creates a softening in the ballast. So when the trains go over it, you get, lack of technical term, you get squishy rail. So you get a squishy roadbed. And that will lead to derailments and all kinds of issues. So the rail bed needs to be kept clean of weeds as best it can. I know there are some areas we can't treat because we're close to a wetland, but the more we can, the better drainage we get out of a rail ballast, and the integrity of the rail is much better. Around switches and light poles and things, herbicides will clear vegetation very well. When mechanical, it's pretty hard to use a weed whacker around a rail switch, so we prefer that. When it comes to large vegetation, mechanical is definitely less expensive, less impactful, and works very well. With small woody, we can't treat anything over 12 foot in height. We can only treat stuff under 12 feet. So when you have woody vegetation under 12 feet, we can treat brush. But the goal of the plan is to, and I think we've achieved that there, is that where we've treated, we allow good plants to come back, stuff that you would want to grow there come back. So we target a plant that shouldn't be there and allow other stuff to come back that can be there. So lower growing vegetation beside a rail is fine. It doesn't block view. And if we have a planted roadside railside corridor, it's going to prevent other woody vegetation from growing up in that area and reducing our herbicide use over time. So it's a combination of processes that result in a pretty low application rate. And I would like to say that I think our herbicide application rate is probably one of the lowest of any probably rail application you'll ever see. Because of our backpack applications, we're using minimal herbicide on the rail and achieving good results. So I'm pretty happy.
Well, I thank you. That was a very complete answer. I would just say that in terms of herbicides, I tend to prefer mechanical, but you make a good argument for the ballast. And I would just mention that when the Greenway was constructed from area of Adams Street out to Granite Avenue in Dorchester, there was a problem with getting it cleared for public use because of the legacy of herbicides in the past. Namely, the soils were all contaminated with arsenic, and those soils either had to be removed or capped. Now, I'm sure when that arsenic was being applied, nobody anticipated what would happen years down the road. But that's one reason I appreciate your efforts to limit your use. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Calvin, let me ask you this, because and this may fall to us. That when I say us, the Conservation Commission itself, because in our file, at least what was distributed, we have the letter from Northern Tree Service, requesting that we consider a determination on your so-called exemptions, and we've been provided a copy of a report from MCP, which I think is Municipal Conservation Professionals, to the DEP, and they contest the exemption component of this, as do we, and as we did in 2019. And I did hear what Attorney Kearney said about the Keolis part of that is still under appeal. So the position that we have taken previously, I can't speak for the commission, we haven't voted on anything, but the position that we did take and did vote on an informal session, that we did not recognize that exemption. And I suspect that it's probably going to be the same when and if we vote tonight. But my problem is I don't have your yearly operational plan. I don't know what chemicals you're using. And we have a scientist in our group here, I personally always look to her to take a look at the, MSDS sheets for the chemicals and make sure some of the old EPA approved chemicals are no longer approved. And
Correct.
we have picked up some, operational plans that have old chemicals on there. So I
Right.
don't have those chemicals, and I don't know if they were submitted to us, but we just didn't receive them in our packets. Do you know if that was submitted?
Well, the YLP notices went out, and the YLP is on the MBTA website. The notice went out. I will say this: the yearly operational plan only specifies herbicides from the MDAR sensitive site list. The current list the state approves, and that list has is up to date and is accurate as to what's approved. We can only use materials that are on that list. We've made a choice to on all of our treatments on the MBTA is to use materials on that list. We don't just because it makes sense to do that. I think that we're basically using the same materials we used last time. The core materials we use are still approved for use. And those are the ones that we'd be using. So there's actually no change in that from last time. There may be changes in the particular registration number of the herbicide. So another version of one with a different registration number, but they've all been vetted by the state toxicologist working with Mass Department of Ag Resources.
You said, and maybe I'm over listening, but you said the core materials are the same. The implication is that there's some other materials that are not core materials that might be different.
Oh, okay. I misspoke there. Meaning, we have materials that are our go-to materials that we use because they're effective. And there's probably, I don't know, 7 or 8 materials on the list, but we only use probably 3 of those. And that's what I mean. So when we do a newspaper posting, 48-hour newspaper posting before we begin treatment, and we list all the herbicides in that posting that we're going to use. They'll be on the plan, and it's typically 3 or 4 materials.
Can you send us a link to the full list and highlight the 3 of your most commonly used?
Yes, I can do that. Yep.
That would be great. I think that would be very helpful.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it would be a mistake on our part to vote without a record. I understand what you said, these may be publicly available data, but that really doesn't help us on the on a vote, because we vote on a record, and somebody comes back and say, why'd you vote that way? Say, well, look at the record. We don't have it. So I find it insufficient that if the applicant says you can look for it elsewhere, and you would be the first person to do that. We often get an application that's before another board, either the ZBA or the planning board, and people will say, oh, it's available over there, go look. Well, we have a burden of proof here. The other applicant is an RDA, and I think we need a full record from you, including the yearly operational plan with the chemicals. And I heard what you said, and I accept what you said, that these are MDR approved or EPA or DEP approved. But that's a moving target. And we've had a lot just within this last year. We've had a lot of chemicals questioned on the basis that EPA is now saying, I'll give you the example, PFAS. The hazard level is changing as we speak, or as I speak. And so I think we need to have a record of what it is that you're going to be using. I don't know. Others, I don't know, Tom, Ingrid, Arthur.
I agree with you right there, John, for sure.
All right.
I don't think we can vote, John, until we have that information.
I agree. Amanda, you had your hand up.
I was just curious on the permit, we're simply requesting confirmation of the delineation as being accurate. That's the request, not for permission for work necessarily. Some of this seems like additional pieces that maybe we could have that written in as provided that we get you all of this material, like copies, so that you are provided with copies of the yearly operational reports. But we weren't requesting a project specifically. We were requesting confirmation of the resource areas and buffer zones.
That's not what the letter says. March 25, 2024, it says that you're looking for a VMP. It's been developed for 2024 to 28.
That's part of the VMP process with the Massachusetts Agricultural Department.
Right.
They need to receive confirmation of where the resource areas are. I think some of these pieces might be like tree removal, cutting things might be a slightly different consideration as opposed to what was being requested tonight.
Well, that's what I'm referring to. What I'm reading in my hand here is the letter from Northern Tree, and it says MBTA's Vegetation Management Plan, VMP, expired on 31 December 2023. A new VMP has been developed for 24 to 28 in accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act. Determination of applicability issued for work conforming to 33 CMR 11 are in effect and must be renewed with the new VMP. Accordingly, I have enclosed an RDA to renew the wetlands delineation along MBTA's, but what happens to the VMP?
The VMP
I don't think you
is
can segregate out the delineation. I know what you're saying.
But the VMP is issued by Mass DAR. This is part of the process. That's what Amanda was getting to. Like, we're requesting the RDA be, that the wetlands be verified. That's what Mass DAR is looking for. That we've come before the Conservation Commission, we're verified that the delineations are accurate.
And then you're coming back for an RDA for the VMP?
No, this is the RDA for the VMP.
Right. That's my point.
That's the point of the regulations as well. The RDA, you're verifying this. This is the crux of the issue. You're verifying the wetlands, the delineation, and DAR issues the VMP. They had their public comment period last Friday.
Not for us. You're not exempt. You have to go through the RDA process with us.
Correct.
You are not exempt.
Yeah.
And that's our position, and we're sticking to it.
But that's this position. So where the RDA is not for the VMP, the RDA is for the delineation of the wetlands.
And I said, are you coming back with an RDA for the VMP? And you said, this is it.
This is it.
Yeah, you just said it again. So why are you asking us to segregate one component of the delineation? And by the way, in my 32 years of doing this, I have never approved a delineation without seeing it, ever. No exceptions. So other commissioners may want to weigh in on this, but my recommendation is we do not split the components of approving a delineation versus approving the VOP and the application of chemicals and what they are. And the components of that which would require pre-marking, which is exactly what we did in 2019, pre-construction meeting to pre-mark those trees coming down. So I'm unwilling to segregate and separate different components of an RDA. But please speak up. I mean, Arthur, Tom, Ingrid, you're not shy.
I agree.
Yeah, I think it should be the total package.
So what would be the total package just right now, the additional herbicides? The herbicides that are being applied?
The VOP.
The VMP.
Well, both, actually. When I said V, I'm sorry. I'm talking about the yearly operational plan, the YOP. And I did say V, I'm sorry. But it's yes, the whole plan for the VMP, V for Victor MP, and the yearly operational plan. Because we don't have that. We've got the maps, but we don't have the yearly operational plan.
So section 10.03 of the general provisions of the Wetland Protection Act explicitly says that any application of herbicides within the buffer zone shall be presumed not to alter an area subject to protection under MGL 13140, only if the work is performed in accordance with such plans as required by the Department of Food and Agriculture pursuant to 333 CMR 11 right-of-way management. This presumption shall apply only if the person has obtained a determination of the boundaries of buffer zones and resource areas. And it has been submitted as part of the plan.
Yes, and 22 communities disagree with you. And we are one of those that disagree with you.
Okay.
So next step, I think, is to continue this until such time as we receive the VMP, because we don't have it.
Right.
And we also received the YOP. I don't want to use the wrong ones, the yearly operational plan and the vegetation management plan. And in addition, I assume that would include the MSDS, but if it does not, I'd want the MSDS for those chemicals.
Correct. So the YOP only gives links to those, but I can provide the sheets, the STS sheets. That's not a problem.
Perfect.
And
that would be very helpful.
And I can have that all sent over to Phil Driscoll tomorrow.
Perfect. Thank you. Amanda, can I go back to you? Is it possible for us, meaning the Conservation Commission, to approve the delineation without going on the right-of-way?
I don't know why you wouldn't be able to. What do you mean?
Well, I don't know. I've got the maps here, but I don't know if we could look at where your markings are, where the resource area stops and where it starts. Can we see it? Have you flagged? Number one, have you flagged it?
Yes, it was flagged by our field crews, and also
I'm sorry, by whom?
By our field staff.
Okay.
The delineation. We have certified people who can go on the rails in the right of way. So yes.
They did not go on the right of way.
No, they did. They have gone through all the trainings and are certified to do that work.
Okay. So my question is, can we, the Conservation Commission, right now, without the requisite training, can we see those flags out to approve the delineation?
I'm not sure what visibility is like between where the wetlands are and access points that are not within the right of way.
I could speak to that, John.
What's that? Tom?
I just happen to know the area, and I would say there's no place where the wetlands and the tracks are the same place. The tracks are always on a berm or embankment, and that embankment has always got a double fence row on either side, keeping you off the tracks. Now, I don't know of anywhere where there are wetlands inside those fences, but as I look at the map, I see there's a big isolated wetland in the area near the Harvest Bridge, but downstream in that large wooded area that we could walk to easily without going on the tracks. This is on the second page of maps, but it's also on the first. It's that area indicated by a white line of dots. And as you go further downstream along the tracks, you see two more areas where the white line intrudes onto the tracks. Those are areas where surface channels go under the tracks for stormwater. And you can see the part that matters from outside the fence on the riverside. So I would just say, if we were to walk that particular area, we would have looked at all the wetlands that are actually bordering wetlands instead of wetlands that are rivers, or wetlands that are defined by a distance from a high water mark. So that was just my read of what where I would want to see any flags. I think that's a pretty limited area.
Okay. I know you're familiar with the area, in fact, the entire area. I'm just trying to see if we can do what I consider to be our duty without getting onto the right of way. And it sounds like we can.
I would say yes.
Yes, okay. And what about it's probably just top of Bank in the area that I was talking about, that is between Elliott Street and Adams Street. And in that,
yeah, that's way up above the retaining wall. There's not going to be anything wet up there. You know, that retaining wall must be 15 or 20 feet high. So imagine if you're behind the steel fence on Elliott Street and trying to maintain that. There's just no way to get at it. What you need is a train car that has a big crane on it, where you can strap a guy in with his chainsaw. It's really a difficult spot.
gotcha. All right, do you want to, because we don't have to, if Calvin can get us the data and we can do a sidewalk in this area on the 20th, which we're already scheduled for. And you're talking, are you talking about all the way up towards are you talking about the area around Capon Street?
Yeah, everything I mentioned is between Capon Street and Central Ave.
Yes.
So if we walked that portion, we could see everything I mentioned.
All right, and can we walk that? I think we can, but because I know we've done it before without intruding onto the right of way. That what I'm trying to do is stay out of the rail line. Right of
Yeah, I would say if we were on the right of way, we couldn't see the wetlands I'm talking about because we would be separated by the fence.
Okay, so if we started at Central Avenue and walked towards Valley Road or Capon Street?
Yeah, either way, or Capon the other way, but always on the north side of the tracks.
Okay, and you can do that without getting into the right of way. I think you can, because we've done it before.
Yes.
For different issues.
Right.
All right.
But you have to bushwhack.
All right. And Amanda, are those flags visible? I don't know if you've got the map in front of you. I happen to be looking at it right now, so I have an advantage over you. But I'm looking at essentially the area where Tom has indicated between Central Avenue and Capon Street. Are those flags there visible for us?
I have not been out there. Calvin, were you able to see the flags? You said you had been out there for some of the delineations.
Yes, and yes, you can see the flags if they're still there, if they haven't been picked off by birds and whatnot.
When were they placed?
They would have been done last summer.
Okay. Yeah, I assume they're still there.
Next question, Amanda or Calvin, what color are they? What colors did you use?
Blue is for bank and pink is for wetlands.
Thank you.
And I would also say that given the maps that they've done, and those are all GPS locations, I think it's, I was out there when they did some of the marking on those wetlands, and yes, it was done from outside the fence. And it's really obvious where the wetlands are there. It's not hard.
Were they doing GPS locations concurrently with the flagging?
Yes. Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
And we've got these overhead pictures, but are there plans for us that we could see with the numbers, so we can match the numbers to where we are?
Like wetland flag numbers?
Yes.
Yes, but plans that are located on the plans, because all the commission's been provided are overhead photographs.
Yeah, that's the typical for the VMP process. That's what I've usually seen it done. But we do have all that data, and we should be able to put it onto plans so that you can see the labels.
All right, so we know where we are. We can say, oh yeah, here's flag 14.
Yes.
Could you do that by the 20th?
Yeah, I think we could do that.
All right, commission members willing to just add this on to our site visit? Tom?
Yes.
Tom, Arthur?
Yes.
Yes, I appreciate your comment, John, that we always look at them.
We do. Arthur, you good?
Yes, and Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to suggest that we do an overlay or just check what we have here with the EPA work along the Neponset River with respect to the identification of wetlands that I shared with you about a month ago following the EPA's presentation with the Neponset River Watershed Association.
Yes. I mean, I don't know if they flags. I don't know what I didn't look at it in detail, Arthur. I know exactly what you're talking about, but I don't know whether or not these areas were the same as that were flagged by the BSC group.
That's why I was suggesting we might revisit it.
Perfect. All right.
That's a good question.
John, on the 20th, when do you think we might be done? Because I've got something in the afternoon.
Oh, I don't think we'll be too long at Turner's Pond.
No, I agree.
Walking around the pond, that's going to be like 20, 25 minutes or so. So if we start at 8:30, we could be here by 9:15. So I think I've been there before myself, so I think we can get through there in an hour.
Okay. All right. So we can be done by 11, you think, for sure?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Is that good? So, Amanda, can we meet you or as designee or Calvin, whoever? And I'm just trying to think at the Capon Street. I think we've parked there before. Remember when the EPA was removing the arsenic soils? We did a site walk in the same area, and I think we all parked on Capon Street. Tom, do you remember that?
Yes, you can do that. If you go over the track,
Right.
there's on-street parking on the right side, and there's a little spur road on that right that leads down to Aluminum Gate, DCR Gate. There's a footpath. That's an easy way to get in from that end.
Oh, good. That's good. So why don't we meet at the end of Capon Street at about 9:15 on Saturday morning, April 20th? Is that good with everybody? Sounds like the commission members are okay. Calvin, Amanda, Alicia.
Yeah, we can figure
who
that out on our end.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. All right. And then you'll get us the other data, Calvin?
Correct. Right.
Perfect. That's good. Then we'll continue the public meeting until the 20th. All right. And that's a public meeting, so we can vote if appropriate.
Okay. That works for me.
All right. Good. All right. Anything else? Any members of the public, abutters or otherwise, comments? Hearing none. Arthur, I see your hand raised.
I'll take it down. I spoke.
Okay. All right. Good. All right. All right. Good. So we'll continue this until the 20th. Thanks all.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is Enforcement Order 24 Wentworth Farm. The applicant, through its representative, Attorney Ned Corcoran, has requested that this be continued until the May meeting. Arthur, Steve, what's the date in May?
The date of the meeting is May 9th.
May 16th or something like that. 14th? I have it, John. May 14th.
I'm sorry, that's incorrect.
May 14th.
I'm reading on the 2023 list. May 14th.
Is that what you got, Arthur?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
May 14th. Now, in the interim, just so that everybody knows, hang on just a second. We are still in the process of finding, there are two parts to this number 24 that's being continued until May for any substantive discussion, but just procedurally, we're asking Deb Keller from Merrill Associates, Mary Hall from GCA, George Collins from
Collins Engineering.
Collins Engineering, right? Okay, thanks. To do, it's a request for a proposal. And in terms of the scope of work, the scope of work is as follows: to review, number one, to review the terms and conditions of our approved order of conditions for 24 Wentworth Farm with a focus on the septic system design. Number two, to assess the efficacy of the septic system as a result of not following the approved design specifications. Number three, to assess the structural integrity of the current boulder wall, I didn't know what else to call it, as opposed to the approved concrete block / block wall, including but not limited to A, its capacity to withstand the lateral pressure from the septic system, including the leaching field. B, its capacity to prevent a blowout potentially resulting from a large rainfall, including the water coming from upstream on Wentworth Farm Road. C, its capacity to prevent erosion in between the non-contiguous boulders, as opposed to a concrete / block wall in the approved design. And 4, to determine whether an as-built plan for a septic system can be completed without an inspection of the system prior to its being backfilled, and whether in this case the as-built plan submitted to the Board of Health was completed with or without an inspection of the system prior to it being backfilled. So that's the scope of work, and it's going out to those three engineering entities. The first of which, Merrill, was actually suggested by the homeowner. So that's just get you up to speed. That's on the septic system wall component of it. On the sort of the surface area issues that we all saw when we were at the site inspection. I can't even think of the date that we were there, just a couple of weeks ago. And there was obvious signs of erosion and sedimentation going into the adjoining wetlands. Steve, I know you've gone up there and we've sort of approved administratively some immediate action to prevent further erosion and sedimentation. And Steve, you've probably got the latest update on that. What have you seen and what's happened?
Well, I saw something very strange I've never seen in any other site. There appears to be 2 Caltex on the lowest level adjacent to the residence. And they are supposed to be taking water from the roof and from a small drain that's in the driveway, and a linear drain in the driveway. Well, at those locations in the backyard, there seems to be the Caltech facilities that are discharging water to the surface. Never seen it before. And then there's little streams or little gullies from those 2 Caltex toward the wetlands on the surface of the ground that eventually be stabilized. So the question is whether those Caltex are working as designed, because they shouldn't be discharging to the surface at all. The water should be going down below the Caltex. So that's another question that we should probably add in the scope. It may be too late. Is that scope out already?
No, they're in my hand.
Okay.
I haven't hit the send button yet.
Okay.
So number 5 would be what? Whether or not the Caltex as designed. Okay.
Are functioning as designed. That's the simple question.
Could you take a photo?
Yes.
Could you share that with us after the meeting, please?
Sure.
Thanks. And you have the photos that I took from up there.
Yes.
During the rain the day after our site walk.
Right.
Good.
Okay. I'll add that as a fifth component of the scope of work and send those out in the morning.
Mhm.
All right. Okay, so that we'll have that data hopefully by the May 14th meeting. All right, thank you. Any other thoughts or questions on that we continue? Seeing none. Enforcement order at 20 Wentworth Farm, which is actually the next lot up, and it's adjacent to the detention basin, which is an issue, I guess, for the homeowners association. But do we have a presenter? There you are. Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Can you tell us what's going on with the homeowners association? Because your enforcement order is related to sedimentation going into the basin, and the basin is clearly clogged and creating a problem. And it appears to us, that is a problem for the homeowners association. Jeff, have you made any progress in getting people together to talk to one another?
No, I haven't been able to get anywhere with them, but I've been maintaining the drainage, so we haven't had a clog since. And
I'm sorry, you maintaining the drainage? You mean in the detention basin?
yeah, anytime there's debris, I'm just clearing it out. I'm there daily, most of the time. So anytime there's debris, I'm just making sure that it doesn't get clogged.
All right. And the erosion.
Do you have to wade to do that?
What's that?
Do you have to wade to do that?
No, I have a nice piece of 3/4 inch strapping. I just kind of clean it off from the edge.
And I was there as recently as yesterday, and it was looking very good. The basin was looking clear. The water in the basin was clear. And I was surprised at that.
Yeah. We something definitely needs to be done to redo it. I think
Sure.
that's certainly obvious, but it's working the way as intended now.
Yes,
Long
it
term,
is.
I don't know what the solution is for that cap. I think it's something similar to what was going on in the what you guys were talking about, where the lake was like rising too high because of the rebar. It's just it clogs up. It's a similar situation.
Right. Yeah. The debris will clog the beehive, up. That's why it has to be maintained continually.
Yeah. So
that's
well,
all.
Between you and Dr. Strom, I was hoping that you'd be able to put enough pressure on your neighbors to get.
My wife is the one that should be handling that.
I will. We all haven't been in communication thus far on the homeowners association, just because people are in varying degrees of moved in. So I can reach out to Todd Hamilton and his representation to get contact information for everybody. I don't have that at this point.
Yeah, we haven't.
I'm just wondering what we should be. Well, let me back up to go right to your property. It appears if the water is clean in the basin that your erosion controls are working. Is that correct, Steve?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, good. Well, that's good news. So yeah. I'm just trying to figure out a way to put some pressure on the homeowners association, because inertia will sometimes define action and nothing's going to happen. And so okay. I'm not sure how.
I'm surprised that the 24 lot hasn't gotten them going, to be honest with you.
Well, me too, because there's a lot of erosion that's coming from the road.
Right. Yeah, because I think they have a case of, some of the wetland problems they're having seems like it might be a homeowners association issue, but from that erosion. But
yes,
we'll see where that goes.
All right. Well, and I can certainly reach out to Ned Cochran, who's the attorney for Dr. Strom. And I don't mean to be impolite and leave his wife off in mentioning that, but I don't know her last name. If she uses the same or a different name. Do you know?
No, we haven't met them.
Okay. All right. Well, there's got to be a way that we can kind of motivate some action. And I think eventually we've got enough data in front of us, including Arthur's pictures. I've got pictures. Tom, you've got pictures. It's a mess on his property. So I suppose we could eventually issue an enforcement order to clean the basin. But maybe the first step would be to simply write a letter to all the residents and say, it's your obligation under the homeowners agreement that be maintained. Please come into our meeting and tell us what you're going to do. Like an invitation as opposed to an enforcement order.
I think that's only fair, John, if I may comment. That way we help to serve as a catalyst for getting the homeowners association on top of the situation, rather than putting the responsibility on one of the homeowners in the entire development area. Maybe we can talk to Todd about this as well.
Yeah,
No,
no, I agree.
that sounds like a good starting point to get everyone together. Then I'm sure the group seems quite capable of figuring it out.
Okay. Well, at least it seems from your perspective that you've stopped the erosion into the street and the basin. So that's good news. So why don't we continue this until May 9th? I'm sorry, May 14th. And then at the same time, reach out to all parties and see if we can get a letter out and have everybody gather.
And
if
John,
Yes.
also, they had a request to be able to start some work on the water line. Is that correct, Jeff?
Yes.
Once they have the erosion controls in, and they're in and working just fine. So I think it's time to allow that activity to happen.
I agree. Does everybody know what that references to? Because when the erosion was still continuing off the property, there was a plan to bring in a trench digger to put in a water line, and we stopped that. So we added a cease and desist until the erosion controls were up and running. They're up and running. They seem to be effective. So from an administrative point of view, I recommend that we remove that cease and desist and let you get back into operation. Is there any? I don't think well, maybe we do need a vote for that. So I would move that we remove the cease and desist order on the basis that the erosion controls are working and allow the trenching to go forward and to complete the house project. Somebody second that?
I'll second.
Thanks, Arthur. Any discussion? Is there anybody, a neighbor that wants to ask a question or anything? I don't see any, so I'll go through a roll call vote. Arthur, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ingrid, how do you vote?
Aye.
Tom Palmer, I can't see you. Can you hear me? Uh-oh. Tom.
Come back, Tom.
Hello, Tom Palmer. He may have stepped away, so I'll vote yay. So you've got the votes, and I don't expect when Tom comes back that he'll have an issue with this. So you're good to go.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Right,
And
well,
just to clarify, if I reach out to all the people in the homeowners association, should I suggest that they appoint a representative to attend your next meeting?
That makes sense, because otherwise it's like trying to herd cats and try to get everybody there at the same time. That's probably not going to work. So I think a representative would be an appropriate approach.
Okay, and then you will give us guidance on what the appropriate solution is to remedy the situation at that meeting?
The simple answer is yes, but somewhere I believe that there is an operations manual that would have been, I believe, part of the original order of conditions that we issued, not for the houses, because there were like two phases there. One was when the infrastructure went in, the utilities and the roadway, that had an order of conditions, and that included the installation of the detention basin. I think there is an O&M plan, the operation and maintenance plan that goes along with that. So
is that something like, so we just should ask Todd what he did originally and just mimic?
Yes. And if you don't have any luck there, we should have it. So Philip, could you just check on that order of conditions? That it would be the Wentworth farm, not a single lot, but rather the street.
Oh, I think I've seen the file for the whole lot, so I'll look at it.
Perfect. All right. So Jeff, if you can stay in touch with Philip at the DPW, and or if you can get it from Todd, that would be great.
Okay, great.
All right, but that's the key to what the remedy is.
Okay.
If you look at that, because I'm certain it has some kind of, clean it out, keep it free and clear so it doesn't get clogged up
Right.
component to it.
And look at it every couple of months or whatever it's necessary.
Very good.
All right, good. All right, thanks all. We'll see you on the
Great.
14th.
Take care.
Thank you. That takes us to additional business. Anything?
You wanted to talk about the ice house, I think, John.
Yes, I just want to make sure that it's working. I mean, I thought that the additional erosion controls looked pretty good. But that's just my untutored eye. And I don't know whether or not, I know Hans sees it pretty regularly because he walks his dog in that area.
And I stopped by last week sometime. It was working great. They built a huge hole, and all the volume of the rain is in the huge hole rather than flowing out to the north and northwest.
That's good news. And that huge hole that you're describing is what, south of the what I call the border where they put the stone?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And it's parallel to the fence line at the rear of the property. So it'll be parallel to Pine Tree Brook.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's doing what it's supposed to do.
Yes, it sure is. And I was very happy to see it.
Okay. Anything else on Ice House? The only other additional business everybody should be aware of is that yesterday, Stephen and Philip and I met with Peter Mello on the Highland Avenue project, and that's the Highland Street project, rather. That's the memory care facility. That's been appealed both to DEP and to the Superior Court, Norfolk Superior Court, which is the correct mechanism for appealing a bylaw order. And we issued both. We did one order for the DEP, the Wetlands Protection Act. We did another for the town bylaw. So it was appropriate that we meet. The issue that came up is whether or not there will be a stay in those proceedings. And right now, we don't know, but there may be a stay. The reason for the stay of the judicial proceedings is that the same project is before the planning board tonight. And that's one of the reasons why Ned could not be here, because he's before the planning board on the memory care facility. As we all know, they came back to us last fall and said there have been some revisions imposed by the planning board, but those revisions seem to be pretty good to us because they reduced the footprint, they pulled back, and that allowed them to pull the driveway away from the 25-foot non-disturbance zone. Because you'll recall that when we issued the order of conditions, we had to have a separate vote because there was an intrusion into the 25-foot. And I think they lost about 900, or we lost from the non-disturbance zone about 900 square feet. But they made up for that. They created an area of about 4,400 square feet of replication land or remedial land, so to speak. But now they've pulled it back, so that's a good revision. There are some other things. I talked to Meredith Hall from the planning board. We just want to make sure we stay coordinated. There may be some other revisions, and the issue, and I don't have a good answer for it, I thought they would have to come back to us automatically if it was a revised plan, but it would be, I think, a minor revision if they're improving the wetlands protection by reducing the footprint of the building and pulling any intrusion of the driveway out of the 25-foot. And just as a footnote, you remember that the intrusion into the 25-foot zone was at the request of the fire chief, who needed additional turning room for the fire trucks. That's why we did it. But now that's not necessary. So that's all good news from the environmental side. There may be some other revisions, I'm not sure. So because it's already before DEP, the planning board plans may go directly to DEP before they come to us. I don't know the answer to that question. but at some point, we're going to see revised plans. And that's all the things that I've mentioned are the reason that all the attorneys may want to ask the court to stay the proceedings and ask the DEP to stay the proceedings until they have the final revised plan approved by the planning board. That's the update. All right, and I think they're going to close the hearing tonight, which means they have, 30 days, 45 days, I'm not sure. They have to issue an opinion within X number of days from the date that the hearing is closed. So if they close it tonight, I expect to see some kind of a plan within the next 30 days. All right, any other thoughts or questions on that? And I don't have any other additional business, I don't think. Anybody?
Mr. Chairman, just one topic of possible interest. As you may recall, I'm the Commission's appointee to the Climate Action Planning Committee, and subcommittee on which I'm serving is focused on waste management, and the environmental coordinator, Jack Turner, for the town, and I and Chase Berkeley have had a meeting on this, and one of the things that has surfaced, mostly through anecdotal information, is how some people manage some of the waste through the stormwater drain system. And there are communities that have markers now on at critical locations for stormwater drains in the communities. I think the city of Boston is one. I've seen a couple in different locations over by Fenway Park, etc. Now you know where I hang out, and a good place. And I was thinking about doing a little bit of homework on this between the two committees, but I didn't want to start doing so without first touching bases with the Conservation Commission. It may lead to something that we might be able to do through future CPC funding or in conjunction with other parties.
Are these the bronze plaques?
Yes, that you see in the bronze that are on the sidewalk or on the street, usually at major intersections and things of that nature. Yes, exactly.
Exactly.
They'll have a fish on it.
Yep. That's
exactly
what I remember.
Drains to river or ocean or whatever. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly, Steve.
But what's the purpose of it? Is it public education?
Yes, and it reminds people.
And it's a deterrent. It reminds people
to what?
To dumping toxic, corrosive materials down the storm drain.
Exactly. Oil, for, changing oil of vehicles and things like that, which I used to do when I was a kid.
Solvents.
Is the statute of limitations run, Steve?
I hope so.
All right, no, that's a great idea, Arthur. I think that's
Brookline has it too. A couple of municipalities have those either plaques or spray painted. I think the plaques are nicer and no doubt more expensive, but I think they capture one's attention more and they last forever.
And I've seen the new words on grates as well. The stormwater, grates themselves. They've been affixed to the grates. So I think it's a good idea. Very good idea.
That's good.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea, Arthur.
And are they bronze in Boston?
I think they are.
I think from the coloration, they may have been bronze when they were cast.
Wow.
Yes.
They're durable. They're meant to last a lifetime.
That's pretty good. In Brooklyn, it's probably gold, right?
Some other cities have got sort of spray painted stencils, but then of course they get eroded and don't last very long.
Right.
Some of the solvents that are being disposed in the culverts, you get poured on those as well.
That's true.
Unfortunately.
Yes.
I'll try and get a couple of photographs and so on down the line and do a little bit of homework on this and bring it back to the commission if that's acceptable.
Acceptable. It's perfect. That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Anything else? I think we're good. We lost Tom, so how about a motion to adjourn? I move. Anybody second?
Second.
Thanks, Ingrid. All in favor? Thanks all. Good night. Thank you very much.
Everybody.
All
Good
right.
night, all.
Good night.
Take care.